Today we're going to be learning how to solve equations with variables on both sides. So to look back at last lesson we did was how to solve two-step equations. Remember, you either add or subtract the constant from both sides. So in this case we subtracted 3 from both sides of the equal sign, and then we multiply or divide is our second step. And in this case we're going to divide both sides by 2, so x equals 10. In a multi-step equation, the first thing we want to look at is, do I have anything I need to distribute? And if there is, we do that first. And then second, we simplify. And that, what we mean by to simplify, is to combine like terms that you have on each side of your equal sign. So combine the like terms on the left side, combine the like terms on the right side. Then we want to get our variables to one side, and as well as the constant, and then we add or subtract, multiply or divide. So once you finish step 3, you're now back to a two-step equation. So let's take a look at this first problem. I have nothing to distribute. There are no like terms on my left side, no like terms on my right side. So now I'm going to get my variables together on one side. So I'm going to take the positive 2x and I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So 5x minus 2x is 3x. I'm left with the minus 3 equals 12. So now we're down to a two-step equation. I'm going to take my minus 3 and add 3 to both sides. So 3x equals 15. And my last step is to divide both sides by 3. X is 5. Before I do that, I want to check my answer to make sure this is accurate. So when I go to rewrite this problem, I have 5 times x. However, we already know x is 5, so I'm going to do 5 times 5 minus 3 equals 2 times x, so 2 times 5 plus 12. So when I type this into my calculator, 5 times 5 minus 3 is 22. 2 times 5 plus 12 is 22. So since this is a true statement, that means x equals 5. So let's take a look at the next one. There's nothing to distribute. I have no like terms on my left side, no like terms on the right. So I'm going to move my variables. I'm going to take the positive 3x and subtract it to both sides of the equal sign. So 5x minus 3x is 2x. Bring down my plus 3 and my 9. So now I'm back down to a two-step equation. Subtract 3 to both sides. So 2x equals 6. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 3. So again, I need to check my work to make sure this is correct. So I'm take my 5, and it's multiplied by x, but since x is now 3, it's 5 times 3 plus 3, and that should hopefully equal 3 times my x, which is now a 3, so 3 times 3 plus 9. So I figured this out. 5 times 3 plus 3 is 18. 3 times 3 plus 9 is also 18. So this again is a true statement. That's true. So that means x equals 3. I still don't have anything to distribute. There are no like terms on the left, no like terms on the right. So I'm going to move my variables. I'm going to take my negative x and I'm going to add the 1x to both sides. So 6x plus 1x is 7x. Bring down my 14 and my negative 7. So two-step equation. Plus 14, I'm going to subtract 14 to both sides. So 7x equals negative 21. Divide both sides by 7. X equals negative 3. So I'm going to check my answer. 6 times x is really now 6 times negative 3 plus 14. And that will equal negative 7 minus negative 3. So when I type this in, 6 times negative 3 plus 14 is a negative 4. Negative 7 minus a negative 3 is also a negative 4. So this is a true statement. So x does equal negative 3. I do have distribution. I have a negative 1 that I'm going to distribute to the 9 and to the x. So when I do that, I have x minus 6 equals 8. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. Negative 1 times x is negative x. I don't have any like terms on my left side, but I do on my right side. I have 8 and a negative 9 that are my like terms. So x minus 6 equals 8 minus 9 is a negative 1 minus x. So now my like terms are gone. So now I'm going to move my variables. I'm going to take my negative x and add that 1x to both sides. So 1x plus 1x is 2x. Bring down my minus 6 and my negative 1. Two-step equation. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides of my equal sign. So 2x equals 5. Divide both sides by 2. X is 2.5. So again, I have to check my work. So I replace my x with a 2.5. I subtract 6. And that's going to equal 8 minus 9 plus 2.5. So 2.5 minus 6 is a negative 3.5. 8 minus the quantity of 9 plus 2.5 is also a negative 3.5. So this is a true statement. So x does equal 2.5. So the next part we're going to look at is determining whether something has a solution, which would be the all real numbers, or no solution. So when we solve this, if it's a false statement, it's going to be no solutions. And if it's a true statement, we'd write all real numbers. So we're going to start with distribution, which we have a negative 1. We're going to be distributing to the 2x and the 5. So I have 14. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Equals negative 2x plus 9. Looking at my left-hand side, I do have like terms. I have a 14 and a negative 5. So my negative 2x, 14 minus 5 is 9. So here, if I add and get my variables together, they actually end up canceling each other out. I'm left with 9 equals 9. And this is a true statement. So since it's a true statement, that means that all real numbers are my solution. Doesn't matter what number I pick for x, it would work out and become true. Second one, I do have distribution, negative 2 to the 4x and to the negative 7. So negative 8x plus 14 equals negative 8x plus 14. I don't have any like terms on either side, so I'm going to move my variables and add 8x to both sides. Those both become 0, so I'm left with 14 equals 14. And that again is a true statement, so that means I have all real numbers for my solution. Next problem, there's nothing to distribute. However, I have like terms on my left-hand side. So if I do 1x minus 4x, I'm left with a negative 3x. And I also have like terms on my left side. I have a 2x and a negative 5x. So I am left with negative 3x plus 1. So if I add 3x to both sides, these both become 0. So that means I'm left with 0 on the left-hand side and a 1 on the right. This is a false statement. That is not true. 0 does not equal 1. So that means there are no solutions. Alright. We are going to first start with distribution. 5 times x and 5 times negative 1. So I'm left with x plus 5 times x is 5x. 5 times a negative 1 is a negative 5, and that equals 7. So I do have like terms on my left-hand side. I have 1x and a positive 5x. So 1x plus 5x is 6x. two-step equation, so I'm going to add 5 to both sides. 6x equals 12. Divide both sides by 6. X equals 2. I am distributing a -1. -1 times x and 5. So -1 times x is a -x. -1 times 5 is a -5. Equals -14. No like terms on either side. This is now a two-step equation. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides of my equal sign. So -x equals a -9. So lastly, I'm going to divide both sides by -1. X equals a +9. Last problem, we are distributing a -1 to the 2x and the -3. So that means we're left with 8x. -1 times 2x is -2x. -1 times -3 is a +3. And that equals 9. I do have like terms on my left-hand side. I have an 8x and a -2x. So when I combine those two together, I'm left with 6x plus 3 equals 9. So I'm going to subtract 3 to both sides because now I'm down to a two-step equation. So 6x equals 6. Divide both sides by 6, and x is going to equal 1.